Welcome everybody to Indivisible Tech Sledge live session in partnership with Indivisible Austin. This is an event that Indivisible Austin has organized at the Texas Capitol in response to January 6th, the unfortunate and horrendous attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, to talk and to show the just outright disregard for democracy that was happening. Joining me is Antoinette Perez, also part of Indivisible Tech Sledge. Antoinette, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Alex. How are you?
Doing pretty good. It's definitely something that we are sad to have to commemorate because it is based on this big lie that Trump lost the election when in fact he did not. But we're going to hear from some local leaders in Austin talking about the state of our democracy. And so we're really, really excited to see people coming together to continue to fight this lie that's been happening and perpetuating through our state, our communities, our country. And we need to be able to continue to do as much as we can to fight this.
It's funny that you use the word sad, because I think out of the entire range of emotions that I've been through, the only times that I've been sad when thinking about this horrific event is at the loss of life. And there have been so many more times where I have raged internally about this and about certain leaders' inability to acknowledge that it even happened.
Yeah, there's definitely a political game that is happening that is the worst political game. That this pursuit for power, for absolute power, is at the cost of our country's democracy. And it's really disgusting. And we really want Texans to know what's going on. Looks like Gil is at the mic and getting started. So we're going to transfer over to him and we'll be back with everybody.
Event is going on all over the country at this time, and there are many, many candles not only in Austin but in Washington, in Houston, in Galveston, in Seattle, just all over the nation. One of 150 events. So bienvenidos. Estamos aquí para recordar que nosotros tenemos el poder. We are here to recognize that we have power. The power to change hearts and to make this nation more just. El poder de corazón para transformar este país a uno más justo y más democrático. No one can take our strength away, neither by fear nor violence. We have the power to change this country into something that is more democratic. And only people who agitate and make violence against us, will they make us stronger. And so I want to say, el pueblo tiene poder. This is our house, and no one can take it away from us. This is our house. I'd like to introduce Lauren Ortel. She is the Texas organizer manager on staff with Indivisible.
Thanks so much, Gil. And everyone for being here with us. Huge shout out to the leaders and members of Indivisible Austin who have put in an incredible amount of work to make this happen. I'm especially excited about our new co-presidents, as Gil mentioned, Gilberto and Trish. And so we are here today because 1 year ago, we witnessed armed right-wing militants attack our Capitol and attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election. This was supported by a faction of elected officials who have tried to cover up their role in this deadly violence. We are here to show that this is unacceptable. We are united in standing up against it, and we will work together toward achieving the Freedom to Vote Act, the Protecting Our Democracy Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and DC statehood. Some quick reminders. Yes, all those things. Some quick reminders. We do ask that everyone stay masked the entire time to help prevent the spread of COVID here. We also ask that speakers or attendees who are running for office refrain from mentioning campaigns in this space just for tonight. And then also everyone, please grab a candle, and you can find these flyers that we have that have QR codes where you can learn more about Indivisible Austin and how to join our efforts. I want to refer to something I saw from the organization showing up for racial justice this morning, especially for those of us who are white. January 6th was one expression of the organizing white nationalists and other far-right groups are doing every single day to build real political power. This event was not an anomaly, and those who participated are people who have been organized very intentionally and by well-funded infrastructure into the positions they hold and the actions they take. As white progressives, we need to commit to out-organizing the right in our communities. There are millions of white people who could go either way, who are conflicted or vulnerable to the racist messages of the right and are being bombarded with them. We have to fight for them as hard as the right is. Imagine if millions of white people rejected white supremacy and instead joined in multiracial coalitions across the country. White people, this is our work, finding our people and giving them a better offer than white supremacy. I'll add to this that Indivisible Austin and partner organizations across Texas are committed to this work, including efforts like deep canvassing that we started here in Austin and could use your help developing further. I hope you'll join us. I'll close with a quote from Heather McGee, author of the book, The Sum of Us, that I highly recommend reading if you haven't already. This is our chance to choose between the zero-sum delusions of white supremacy and the benefits of a truly multiracial democracy. Let's pledge on this terrible anniversary to do all that we can to protect democracy. Thank you, and I'll now hand it over to Trish.
Hello, good evening. And just want to add real quick, Lauren, she is absolutely awesome. And I know that Indivisible Austin would not be able to do or be here today to be able to do the things that we do without Lauren. So thank you, Lauren. Our first speaker for the evening is going to be Gina Hinojosa, who proudly serves the constituents of District 49 in the heart of Austin and the central corridor of the Texas capital city. The 87th legislative session marks Gina's third legislative session. She was reappointed to serve as Vice President of the Human Services Committee and as a member of the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. During her time in the Texas legislature, Gina has served in the following House committees: Defense and Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security and Public Safety, Economic and Small Business Development, and House Administration. It is my privilege and my honor to introduce Representative Gina Hinojosa.
Thank you, Trish. I've got a lot going on here for that introduction, and thank you to Indivisible Austin for organizing us here tonight. I want to begin by wishing everyone a happy new year. I know that most of us, if not all of us, were eager to shed the burdens of 2021 and the disappointments of last year to look towards a brighter future. And the thing about a new year is it offers us an opportunity to set our intentions for what's better than what came before. We gather here today because we are Americans. And what came before on January 6, 2021 was a strike at the heart and soul of our freedom. An attack on our US Capitol, the likes of which we'd never seen before. And many of us could not imagine that such an attack could occur until we saw it with our own eyes. And so I know that many of us are gathered here today because it is our intention to do whatever it is in our power to ensure that nothing like that ever happens again, not on our watch. So we are called to gather in vigil tonight to keep watch, to take a moment to reflect on the lives that were lost and the jeopardy that we still face. And as we look forward to 2022, this is an opportunity for us to take stock of what has happened, to evaluate where we are with a sobriety befitting of January in many ways, and to chart a course for a way forward. And our way forward for the coming year is to secure our freedom. The foundation of that freedom is our freedom to vote. Our freedom to make decisions about the laws, the rules that govern our futures, our families, our planet, and our very bodies. No matter your gender or your race or the zip code you live in or the state you live in, every American is entitled to that basic freedom. Every American is entitled to equal access to the ballot. And for that reason, we need federal protection for our voting rights. We need a federal standard for our elections. And here in Texas, we have experienced firsthand what it means to not have a federal standard for our elections, starting with gross gerrymandered maps that on their face blatantly dilute the power of growing minority communities. Our Republican majority has usurped the power of the people to select their representatives with these gerrymandered maps and taken it for themselves to tighten their grip on power. On top of that, the Republican majority passed a law that my House colleagues, Israel and Vicki Goodwin here today, worked tirelessly with me to fight back against when we broke quorum, went to DC, spent a month trying to lobby our Congress for federal voting rights. We were able to get good things into that federal law. We need that law to pass. The state law passed like we knew it would. We could only hold it off for so long. And what is in that law makes it harder for Texans to vote. Does away with nighttime voting that was taken advantage of by shift workers so that they could vote on their hours off. It empowers, that law passed by the Republican majority empowers partisan poll watchers to occupy our polling places and watch you vote. It criminalizes the basic activities of election workers. And we know why they did it. We know why they did it because our indicted Attorney General, Ken Paxton, boasted in an interview that but for his act to block election officials from sending applications to vote by mail to eligible Texans, Trump would have lost Texas. They are loud and proud and clear about their intentions. Preparing for tonight, I reread Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail because the challenges that we face today and the threats that we face today are very much a continuation of what he fought against more than 50 years ago. And in that letter, he wrote these words that ring very true to me, and I know will ring very true to you. He wrote, "To root out injustice takes strong, persistent, and determined action." Strong, persistent, and determined action. And I know, if I know anything about all of you, it's that you are persistent. And I know we get frustrated. I know that justice does not come fast enough for us. I know that Congress should have passed this law last year. But real change is not fast. Real change takes strong, persistent, and determined action. And every once in a while, just when you're at the height of your frustration and you feel like it's all for naught, sometimes there is a breakthrough moment. And friends, I believe today we are having a breakthrough moment. A moment that our president defined today in his speech as an opportunity for, quote, a renaissance of liberty and fair play, I think were his words. And that renaissance is what you all and your work and all of us inspired. We were the embers that sparked that renaissance, that sparked this moment that has led the way to what is possible and what is necessary to preserve our freedom. Chuck Schumer has said there will be a vote before MLK Day on federal voting rights. With this dogged determination to make this happen, we know our president and our vice president will be traveling to Georgia on January 10th to give another speech on voting rights. We know that our former president, President Jimmy Carter, just put out an op-ed saying we must do everything we can to protect our democracy. And so it is finally, seemingly, the full court press that we have all been urging for so long. In these next 10 days is our opportunity to join our forces and our efforts and our voices to the national effort to pass federal voting rights legislation, a national standard for our elections. This is the time to give it everything we've got. This is the time for the big push. And after those 10 days, we will work and hope for the best, but no matter what happens, we will take stock, we will regroup, and we will continue to do our work because we are in a moment of crisis. What happens in our time determines whether our democracy, the greatest democracy this world has ever known, will continue. And whether we like it or not, whether by happenstance or by God or by fate or whatever you believe in, we have all been chosen for this moment. And I know we will rise to this moment. And I'm honored to work side by side with all of you to give this essential effort everything we've got. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ted Clem. I get to one. Yeah, okay. I get the honor of introducing Representative Doggett. Congressman Doggett represents communities from San Antonio to Austin. He serves as a chairman of the Health Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee, the oldest committee of the United States Congress. Committee Doggett is Representative Doggett is also a member of the Ways and Means Select Revenue Measures Subcommittee. The Ways and Means Oversight Subcommittee, the Joint Committee of Taxation, and the House Budget Committee. With no more for me to say, I'll introduce you to and have the honor and the privilege to introduce you to U.S. Representative Lloyd Doggett.
Ted, thank you very much. And thank you, Texas Patriots, for being here tonight. We care about our country, and it's great to join with these tenacious and courageous State House of Representatives who've done such important work this year, here and in Washington. You know, we're gathering here as darkness approaches on this beautiful, crisp night. We mark the anniversary with a candlelight vigil because together, indivisible, we will be the light in the face of darkness. Authoritarianism from the bleakest parts of the last century does not belong anywhere on this planet, but it certainly doesn't belong here in the land of the free. And that's what we're about. Today, we are lifting our voices and offering our prayers. But tomorrow, we must renew our efforts to engage more of our neighbors, to register more, and overcome the malicious voter suppression that emanates from this very structure. If more of us turn out, then we can turn out from office those who insist on suppression, who insist that the only valid elections are the ones that they win. The Republican Party today is built on lies, COVID lies, climate lies, and the coup lies. And these big lies cost lives. I was at the Capitol on January the 6th. 141 law enforcement officers suffered injury, and there were some deaths. These lies threaten our health, they threaten our wealth, and Trump likes to carve his name on everything. There is one place that it belongs, and that is on the gravestones of the many who are buried today because of his lies. The only place that I think his name truly belongs. And what a powerful speech we heard this morning from President Biden. As he said, he called out Trump's web of lies and affirmed that we are in a battle for the soul of America to protect our freedoms. Because we know now that January 6th was not just one day, but rather it was the culmination of weeks of plotting. It was nothing less than an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States of America, a plot, an attempted coup. And that bloody day was the result of what ended up being a botched effort, aided and abetted by Republican office holders without the courage to stand up for freedom. And even after the coup was suppressed, continued to deny the outcome of the overwhelming vote of the American people. As they continue to wink and nod at violent insurrectionists, Republicans are laying down a carpet, a very red carpet, for the next overthrow attempt. It may not encircle the Capitol again, but it's aimed at encircling and ending our democracy. The next attempted coup, I think, is one that is already underway in this building, with people in pinstripe suits that believe in suppressing the vote and purging the voting rolls and installing members of Trump's cult in key positions to administer our elections. We can't put up with that. They want to ignore the popular will. They want to expand across the country the same kind of wrongs that Greg Abbott has posed here in Texas. Our mission is an urgent mission. We must safeguard our democracy from those who've given up on democracy in favor of autocracy. We've got to end the Republican filibuster, enact the voting rights legislation named for my dear friend and deskmate John Lewis. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act, together with the Freedom to Vote Act. This is legislation that is designed to ensure that every American can cast their vote, and then they know their vote will be counted and honored. So we begin now by insisting that this legislation move forward, but also with a recognition that whatever happens in Washington, we each individually have a responsibility to register and turn out every voter possible, and to do it early as possible. We must install overall some national guardrails on our democracy before it permanently goes off the rails. Peacefully protecting our democracy is demanding, but it's worth the effort. Let us never give up and never give in. And together, let's use every nonviolent means that we can possibly use to bring about the change that we know this state and this nation so desperately need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Representative Celia Israel, elected in 2014. Celia Israel represents House District 50 in the Texas Legislature. During our time in the legislature, Representative Zayed has championed legislation protecting voting rights, investing in transportation infrastructure, and improving safety and supporting LGBTQ youth. She is a member of the Legislative Study Group, the Women's Health Caucus, the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, and is a founding member of the Texas House LGBTQ Caucus. It is my privilege to introduce to you our next speaker, Representative Celia Israel.
Thank you all very much. I'm not sure what to say, but I am remembering that what Rep. Goodwin and Hinojosa and I experienced last year was it was a legacy. Whatever we do in the community, whether it's public service or community activism, you want to look back and say, I did that. I've helped make that happen. And I can't tell you how proud we were to stand up for Texas and say, enough is enough. And to break quorum and move that bill through the House, as disappointed as we were that it lost its stride in the Senate, we all collectively made that happen. Nothing happens outside these domed buildings, inside these domed buildings without a lot of pressure from the outside. That's where Indivisible comes in. So thank you for your voice. Soy orgullosa de ser Latina Tejana. Soy orgullosa de ser aquí con ustedes. No hay nada más importante en esta comunidad, en este tiempo, que el derecho de votar. No hay nada más importante. Everything that we do is built on our democratic system and on our right to vote, whether we care about air quality or water quality or transportation. All of these issues, the underpinning is the right to vote. And we've been through so much, but as Rep. Hinojosa has indicated, this is not the time to give up. For the love of Texas, for the love of this country, I implore you, let's continue the fight, because she is worth it. This country is worth it. This state is worth it. And if we can do it within these halls, I hope that you believe that you can do it, because together we are supporting one another. We are leaning on one another through all of these difficult times that we're living in. So thank you, Indivisible, for bringing us together during this momentous time. And let's pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Let's pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Ya es tiempo. Thank you and good night.
Next, we'll have Ash Hall speak. Ash serves as Democratic Precinct Chair, the LGBTQIA plus lead for Indivisible Texas, Vice President of the Blue Action North Austin Democrats, Chair of the Travis County Democratic Party's Legislative Task Force, and as a policy consultant for progressive organizations throughout through their new LLC, Justice Strategies. Ash is committed to reaching justice for all marginalized communities and changing cultures and norms in favor of compassion and equality. It is my honor and privilege to introduce you to Ash Hall.
Awesome. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Yeah, so today is the anniversary of an attack on our democracy, not simply because we saw people climbing into a building that symbolizes a lot for all of us, but because these insurrectionists sought to stop the functioning of our democracy, to stop counting votes, to stop the peaceful transition of power, and in some extreme cases, to end the lives of those that we ourselves elected to represent our interests. At the time, as we looked on in horror, I think many of us had this best case scenario hope that this would mark a violent ending to what was ultimately a very violent presidency. But unfortunately, what we were witnessing was a continuation of attacks on our democracy and the beginning of a new level of divisiveness and animus in our nation. Even now, there are people who deny that anything wrong happened that day. There are people who genuinely believe the 2020 election was stolen. And there are plenty of people who are content to sit back and stoke the flames of these lies. To this day, we now live with the new expectation that any electoral victories by progressives will be contested by far-right leaders, no matter how secure our elections are. And we're already seeing this in our state, and we can expect more this year and in many to come. This new reality does not mean that our democracy is lost, but it does mean we have a lot of very hard work to do if we want to strengthen and protect it. So I'm going to go over a few things that we've got to get done if we're going to change things from here on out. First of all, as has been said before, we need to push Congress to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to vote out the state legislators who passed the anti-voter SB 1 into law and the state leaders who continue to undermine our election results. We need to make sure that our neighbors know our newer election laws from SB 1 so that they aren't jailed for innocent voting mistakes like Crystal Mason in North Texas. Those of us in Travis County who can count on pro-voter candidates to win in our area, we need to assist pro-voter candidates in areas with less resources for these candidates. And for all of us, we need to recognize that as much as January 6th was about attacking our democracy, behind that attack was a group of people who were threatened by a government that was less willing to idolize their whiteness and their maleness. Much of our work lies in anti-racism efforts, including making sure that our schools teach the truth about our history and the legacy that we've inherited, because a healthy democracy requires an informed electorate. This work is going to be very difficult, I will not lie to you, and it's probably going to take a long time, and we're going to probably have a few losses before we see a longer victory. But I feel more resolve and more comfort in knowing that we are in this together and that we all have something to contribute to this particular movement. And so I thank you for being here today to mark this day with us and to recommit to defending our democracy. Please be safe, be well, and thank you again for your dedication to keeping our democracy strong.
Well, Representative Vicki Goodwin is coming up to the podium pretty soon. Representative Goodwin represents Texas House District 47 in Western and South Travis County. She has really been involved in community work here in Texas, helping schools, helping homeowner associations, helping Habitat for Humanity. Just a tiny bit of the things she's done has just been amazing for the community. It's wealth. And by the way, I think you all know those people who broke quorum. That's Representative Goodwin. Representative Goodwin.
Good evening. We are here tonight to remember the lives lost and the trauma inflicted by those who believed in the big lie. May I suggest, along with remembering, and I know this is hard, but we must forgive. Hold accountable, yes, and forgive. This is important because if we can't forgive, we continue to hold anger and hatred inside of us. And that's what drove the insurgency, a hatred burning inside those people. When we lose faith in the virtues of others and lose trust in sacred institutions, we risk devolving into anarchy. How do we build trust? That's what we must figure out. 1 year ago today, we almost went off the cliff, but we were pulled back by a force that is greater than Trump and his followers. We must believe that while we nearly went over that cliff into chaos, we came back and triumphed by certifying the election results and by starting the process of holding the rioters accountable. We must not forget what happened, but we must continue the process of healing and moving forward. Here we are in 2022. It's time to move forward and find our footing in this new world. We rely on each other and together provide a safety net for ourselves and for others. Kindness pays off and costs us nothing. Patience must be recalibrated as we move in this fast-paced world. Understanding must be valued as we grapple with people who don't always share our worldview. We have to figure out a way to live in a world with people with different views. We must acknowledge and forgive and bridge the divide. I wasn't in DC on January 6th, but even here in Texas, the world was several degrees more chaotic. The Texas Capitol was full of DPS troopers armed to the hilt to ensure a copycat didn't try something in our building. The shock and dismay sank in even as we were numb from months of isolation and COVID protocols. What we need to remind our fellow Texans is the Trump party is the party of deception and denial. And our Democratic Party is the party of healing and inclusion. What we must do is work to build back trust in government and trust in the people who run elections. We need each and every one of you here today to do more than ever before to participate in and help save our democracy. The steps are simple, but take time and energy. We must first register people throughout Texas to vote. Second, educate voters on candidates up and down the ballot. Third, encourage people to vote in every election, including primaries. Fourth, inspire people to run for office or to work on a campaign. 5, find people to work as election judges, poll workers, and poll watchers. A friend told me a story of his efforts to register people to vote. He has gone door to door. He's stayed at gas stations, talking to people as they pump their gas, has gone to picnics and festivals, and has spent many hours a week talking to and encouraging his community to register to vote. He lives in a rural area where trust in government is low. His story and his efforts are what inspire me to do more. Another person who inspires me is Crystal Mason, a woman who was arrested for attempting to vote while on probation. Despite this horrendous situation, she is still advocating for voting rights and encouraging others to register and vote. If she has the fortitude to push forward through her adversity, we can all work harder to get out the vote too. Our democracy is worth every bit of work we put into it, and it's up to us to save our fragile democracy. Thank you.
Hello. The next speaker we have tonight is Joe Jaworski. Joe's a trial lawyer and a former mayor of Galveston, Texas. As a mayor, he was defined by his unwavering support for and success in rebuilding Galveston Island after a devastating storm, instituting public housing, and which was a political choice. This is terrible. I can't see it. I'm so sorry.
I got your back.
Joe, help me out here.
God bless. Thank you very much. Right on.
Austin, Texas, I am so proud to be standing here with you in front of the People's House. Claro que sí, Celia, soy orgulloso a asistir con ustedes en frente de la Casa del Gente. So Texas is changing. Texas, which we are so proud of being here in this state, is changing. It's becoming more diverse. More people are moving here. It's a wonderful thing. We have always been a braggart state, and it's okay to do that because there's a lot of things to be proud about. I'm running for office, and I know that we're not here to campaign tonight. We're here to reflect on the anniversary of a very dark moment in American democracy. But I want you to know I am running for Texas Attorney General. And so to be fair, I'm standing here on behalf of all my colleagues running in the Democratic primary. It's been since 1998 that we've had a contested primary in the Democratic Party for Attorney General, and this time we've got 5. So I'm here for all of them, including myself. I spoke to a friend of mine, Tommy, who told me when I was asking him to support my campaign, he shared that for the first time in his life, he has felt embarrassed to say that he's from Texas. I couldn't believe my ears. But what he was talking about was the abandonment of the rule of law of our sitting Attorney General, the abandonment of proper values to support our National Guard when they are being forced into a job that doesn't pay them an adequate wage, doesn't allow them health care, and has cost 4 suicides. It's shocking, all in the name of primary politics. And so when I reflected on Tommy's comment that he's never felt this way before about being a Texan, as I drove to Austin, I realized I was passing by the Texas State Cemetery on the way to the People's House here. And so, having arrived a little early, I dropped in to see some of the giants that made Texas what it is. There's no way you can do it all in 30 minutes, but that's what I had. But I paid my respects to Stephen F. Austin. I paid my respects to John Connolly, Bob Bullock, but also Barbara Jordan, but also Sarah Weddington. These are the giants who stood in our public institutions. You remember? You remember Barbara Jordan in Watergate? My belief in the Constitution is strong. And yet, our Texas Attorney General, Mr. Paxton, filed a lawsuit for his new client, Donald Trump, which was laughed out of the Supreme Court. But that was the initiation of the big lie. It made it to the big house, the Supreme Court. And a month later, there Mr. Paxton was in Washington, D.C., with his stochastic remarks urging people to fight. And 4 hours later, the Capitol was breached. And in a decidedly un-Texan, cowardly fashion, when asked, well, look what you did. Your people breached the Capitol. He said, oh no, those weren't Trump people. That was Antifa. Absolutely embarrassing. So people wanted to see his texts and emails, since after all, your job's in Austin, Texas. What were you doing in DC that day? And he has steadfastly refused to turn that over, even though it's a public document. Ladies and gentlemen, don't feel embarrassed about being a Texan. Be proud that you're here today because you are Texans. And so, what's the path forward when you have people like Ken Paxton who have decided to stab the people of Texas in the back and side up with Mr. Trump, his new client? What's the path forward? Elections? Absolutely. Aren't they making it harder for us to vote? They're trying. But I'm here to tell you that there is change in the air. 2022 is the year that we will elect a Democrat to the consequential office of Texas Attorney General. And when we do, here's something that we can do, because they haven't taken this one away yet. And I'm going to look to the youth tonight, and I know it's getting cold, but this ought to warm your heart. What if you had a Texas Attorney General who, instead of filing frivolous litigation in the Supreme Court to sue 4 other states for their elections, what if instead you had a Texas Attorney General who would send a letter every August to every principal in every high school, public, private, charter, religious, citing Texas law that was passed in the People's House, Election Code 13.046D, which says every principal will register twice a year every student who attains the age of 18. And it could be a nice letter. It could be a firm but nice letter. Principal, this is your Attorney General. Please confirm receipt of this letter and do let us know the 2 dates in the school year that you're going to offer registration to every senior who attains the age of 18. And let us know, because we're going to be there to celebrate with them. And instead of being an embattled incumbent who dare not go out into the public lest he be hooted and picketed, instead, what if you had an Attorney General that every month or every quarter went to campuses to stoke the civic interest of our youth, because our youth can save us. Can you imagine Texans proud here on this chilly night if every 18-year-old in our state were registered and turned out to vote and adopted the essential element of American citizenship at such a young age? It becomes a habit every 4 years, doesn't it? And can you imagine if we can stoke the zeal at age 18 when it comes time to vote that our teenagers feel only 2 years earlier when it's time to get the driver's license? That, to me, is real solution, real on the ground, positive leadership. And we don't have that now, but you can. All you got to do is vote for it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to be with you tonight. Joe Jaworski, God bless us all.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Mark Trahan, who is Hays County Democratic Party Chair. Mark has served as a precinct chair, as a co-sponsor of the College Democrats at Texas State, and spent countless hours working with local, state, and national candidates on their campaigns. As a social worker by training and a faculty member at Texas State University with experience working in government and politics, his focus will be on expanding our purpose to elect Democrats while meeting the needs of our county party. With years of experience listening to others as a professional social worker, Mark is ready to be available to address our community and county party needs while developing a strategic plan for the organization. It is my privilege to introduce you to our next speaker, Mark Trahan.
Hi, greetings to all of you. Thank you for being here on this chilly, chilly night. My name's Mark Trahan. I'm the chair of the Hays County Democratic Party, and I'm here tonight in solemn vigil with you, thinking about the loss of life on January 6th, and also those law enforcement officers that lost their life both during and after the event, acknowledging those invisible wounds to and grateful for those law enforcement officers. And I'm also here to do a little bit of rallying. Today, just like any other day in the recent history of America, people got up and worked. They had a meal. It seemed like a normal day, but it was not. Under the surface, in the cracks, a disease continued to grow unchecked, a disease that would plague each and every American if left to fester. That disease, an evil lie, has already infected our country, and over time, it has turned Americans against each other. The lie would change the way people viewed leaders and governance, and would produce hate and fear and turn people to darkness. A darkness that would incite a riot that would kill, a riot intended to overturn a free and fair election. Today, January 6th, marks the day 1 year ago that the insidious lie incited a coup to attempt to remove a democratically elected president from office. Most of us remember where we were. We recognize the importance of the moment, and we know the stakes. As more and more evidence surfaces of the calculated attempt to overturn the election, from a plan to overturn the vote to attempts to sow chaos, we see that January 6th was a specific and intentional attack on our government. Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence, particularly to civilians, to intimidate in the pursuit of political endeavor. The importance of this moment cannot be overstated. There was a plan, it was executed and intended to overturn an election. Even to this day, the lie continues to infect our country. State legislatures across the country, under leadership from those that espouse the same lies, are suppressing voting by passing voting restrictions, creating more challenges to people to access the ballot box, particularly those that live in marginalized and historically invisible communities, especially communities of color. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s words resonate with truth at moments like this, offering a wisdom that transcends race and ethnicity and economic status. I'm reminded of his dream. With Martin Luther King Jr. Day in our near future, the words of MLK highlight the importance of this moment. We have come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is the time to engage in the luxury. This is not time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality to all of God's children. To me, the charge is clear. Now is the time to take immediate and urgent action to protect and defend the right to vote for every person regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, or physical activity, ability. Everyone deserves the right to access the ballot box, and we deserve to have that right because it is the basis of all other rights. We have the solution. The solution is the three for democracy. The three for democracy. The Freedom to Vote Act, which would restore fairness and integrity into our election system. The Protecting Our Democracy Act, which strengthens the guardrails of abuse of presidential power. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to ensure that no voter is left out, turned away, or discriminated against. And finally, enact DC statehood, which allows residents of Washington, D.C. to have representation. But there is something we can do right here in Texas. We must register every person to vote. We must ensure that every registered voter can exercise that right to vote on election day. The deadline for voter registration for the primary is coming up. It's January 31st. We must remind and encourage our friends to vote. We must remind and encourage our family to vote. We must remind and encourage our neighbors to vote. We will continue to register voters. We will continue to demand that our leaders support democracy. We will continue to restore the hope and the dream of a government that is by the people and for the people. It is a fight that we will win because it is a fight that we must win. Thank you.
On January 6, 2021, GOP extremists denied Joe Biden's election victory, encouraged a deadly insurrection at the Capitol, and have continued to block progressive progress in Congress since then. In Texas, as in many other states, they've attacked reproductive rights. They've attacked LGBTQ+ rights. They are now attacking teachers, schools, librarians, and school board members. They've enacted voter suppression laws against people of color and the disabled. And if you think that you're safe because you're not in one of these categories, you are wrong. Because when one of us is suppressed, we are all suppressed. Y'all, they've raised an enormous amount of money since then, and they're still continuing now. So my challenge to you today is consider donating to your favorite progressive Democratic candidate. Volunteer for a campaign or your area Democratic Party. Join a progressive organization. Check your voting status to make sure that you're good to go on election day. Register to vote if you're not. Ask your friends to make a plan to vote. Take your grandmother to the polls to vote. This is our democracy. Take it back. And if you don't like who represents you, like Willie says or sang, vote them out. At this time, we'd like to observe a moment of reflection. Please light up your candles and hold them up. Candles for democracy that works for all of us as it should.
There's a little flame inside us all. Some shine bright, some shine small. The rains will come and the waters rise. But don't you ever lose your light. In this life, you will know love and pain, joy and sorrow. So when it hurts, when times get hard, don't forget whose child you are. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Gonna let it shine. May you live each day with no regret. Make the most of every chance you get. Let your eyes get wide when you look at the stars, with the same sense of wonder as a child's heart. With the ones you love, treasure the time. And for those who are gone, keep their memories alive. Hold on to your dreams, don't ever let go. There's a fire inside you, burning with hope. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Gonna let it shine. There will be days when you wanna give up, when the clouds settle in. But after the rain comes the sun. Don't you ever forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. One day there will be no more pain, and we will finally see Jesus' face. So until then, I'm gonna try to brave the dark and let my little light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, gonna let it shine. Oh, shine. Gonna let it shine. There's a little light inside us all.
Nancy Thompson is a creator of a Facebook group, Mothers Against Greg Abbott, or the new MAGA. Nancy is a mom that was frustrated with Greg Abbott not putting COVID-19 protocols in place for schools. She showed up at the Capitol with a sign, and the rest is history. It's my privilege to introduce to you our next speaker, Nancy Thompson.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today with all these great Texas leaders. A year ago, I was at home watching the attack on the U.S. Capitol live on TV with my children with tears in my eyes. And a few years earlier, my husband and I took our children to DC to go tour the beautiful Capitol. And one of my favorite experiences was actually seeing the actual US Constitution. And when I think of democracy, I think of my favorite words in the US Constitution, because they remind me of who we are and what we need to be. Who we are is we the people. And who we need to be is the United States. United comes from the Latin word uniti, and it means make into one. It is our job as Americans to be we the people. As Texans, we need to find ways to work together with others, with those that may not always agree with us on all of the issues, maybe 7 out of the 10 issues, maybe 5 out of the 10 issues. But we need to seek new ways to become one, to become united. And this isn't going to happen overnight. Way back when, in the 1700s, it took our founding fathers 13 years, from July the 4th, 1776, to March the 4th, 1789, to become the United States. And that is when our founding fathers created the US Constitution. But this time around, we don't have the luxury of 13 years. We live in the era of internet speed and everything happens faster. So I ask all of you today, who will join me in fighting for our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech? Now say it with me, we the people. Okay, and who is going to join me in fighting for the Freedom to Vote Act? We the people. Okay, and who is going to join me in fighting for the John Lewis Rights Advancement Act? We the people. So Texas senators, I'm not going to name them by name. They know who they are. I ask you, when Senate Leader Schumer brings these acts up for debate, whose side are you going to be on? Are you going to be on the side of democracy, or are you going to be on the side of autocracy? Who wants to know? We the people. But not just any people, a united people. We the people of the United States of America. Now, I'm Nancy Thompson, and I'm so honored to be here today. I'm the founder of Mothers Against Greg Abbott, and I'm here to tell you that Texas families have had enough. We're showing up, we are speaking up, and we are standing up for American democracy. And we are asking all of you here today, those on TV, those at home, those here in person, we're asking all of you here today to be more than a voter. Thank you so much.
Well, I have the pleasure to introduce to you a young man that I really admire. He's a good guy, good old Texas guy. And Clayton, I call him Clayton. He goes by Clayton, but he's Clayton Tucker. And he's been fighting big time to help make this world healthier, a big advocate of getting folks healthy and vaccinated during this pandemic. He ran for District 24 here in Texas, and he is state director of Our Revolution, Texas. Please, please give this fellow a Texas welcome.
Let me start off by really thanking all of our wonderful speakers, our organizers, and all the attendees who are braving this cold, cold weather we're having right here in Texas. At least this is Texas cold. This is probably not a quite Northeast cold. And also really want to thank the DPS for keeping us safe, and also the Capitol Police, who quite literally saved our democracy 1 year ago. So we all want to provide for ourselves and our families. Whether we're white, black, or brown, newcomer, or fifth generation, we all want to provide for those who we love. And yet, many of us struggle to meet our basic needs. We struggle, and even more of us are really worried that our children, or even my generation, will have it way worse off. But instead of delivering for working folks, many politicians are more content to divide and distract us along racial and economic lines, using every dog whistle and big lie that they can, so that they can build and maintain their own power and give kickbacks to the powerful elite, the so-called greedy few, as I like to call them. And after now, they've been attacking our pocketbooks. They nearly crashed our grid last year, and they're going after more and more of our bodies. They are increasingly coming for our votes. Those greedy few and their politician puppets want nothing more than to destroy our democracy. What makes me sad, and I want to be very sincere about this, it makes me sad that so many of our fellow Americans have bought into the big lie. Truly, it breaks my heart that so many people to this day are falling for it. And they keep saying, or they were definitely saying then, stop the steal. I, of course, wonder where all they were when the Electoral College overruled the popular vote in 2016, or in 2000, for that matter. And as we can see, their war on democracy is nothing new. They've been doing this for a long time. But despite all of this, there's one fundamental truth that they know they can never overcome. One fundamental truth that the greedy few and their puppet politicians actually fear. And that is that there is strength in numbers, and there's a hell of a lot more of us than there are of them. So when we, as a diverse people, come together to fight for our values and our democracy, so long as we stand together against the dog whistles and the big lies, united against just the greedy few and their puppet politicians, well, as a great Texan once said long ago, we shall overcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. It warms my heart, and really everyone here with Indivisible, to see you here. This community that comes together and supports each other and supports freedom, libertad, comunidad, el pueblo. This is important. As Clayton was saying, they are afraid. This is why they did what they did in January, because they're afraid of the growing power. And I'm here to, well, I don't think I need to remind you because you guys are here. You're involved. They are afraid that our power is going to get stronger and stronger, and they want to suppress our vote. So please, our next job is to get involved. I beg you, get involved, join some organizations here in town, get involved with Indivisible if you'd like. There are other places we can help you canvas, we can help you phone back, we can help you write cards, we can help us get organized. If you want to do what we're doing here tonight, I got to tell you, it's easy. You can do it. Let's come. Let's do it. You know? And so this is what we need to do. And you're the base. This is awesome. So welcome. And please drive safely. And let's stop these insurrectionists. They're the ones that have been doing this. All right. What happened in January is nothing in comparison to what these jokers are doing. All right. This is our house, our country. Thank you.
What a great event, Antoinette. It was great to hear from all the speakers, all the different representatives and leaders, discussing what January 6th is now going to be remembered for in our history, as a day when democracy was attacked in such a violent and awful way. This was a great event by Indivisible Austin. We want to give a huge shout out to the organizers, Gil Ramos, Trish Contreras, Shane Johnson also lending a hand. He wears a couple of different hats as well as with Sierra Club, Ted Clem, Natalie Ball, and so many more. Lauren Ortel, as mentioned, is the Indivisible National Texas State Organizer. And so just an amazing job by all of them. What were your thoughts, Antoinette, as you were hearing the speakers reflect on this day?
I was buoyed by the hope, and I was most inspired by the speakers who got real with us about the work it's going to take, because that's what it's always been about, is the work needs to be done. We need more people to do the work. So that has been on my mind a whole lot lately. How about for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's something that's so important for people, you know, to understand what we want. We want satisfaction as soon as possible. We want to have a equitable, safe, just, inclusive society. But because there are people who don't, and those people also have resources, it requires us to figure out how to offset that. And that is through building relationships, that is through contributing in the ways that we can, whether it's with time and organizing, whether it's talking to your family, talking to your neighbors, whether it's giving financial support. There's an infrastructure that is needed to have sustainable organizing and the work to be able to push back against what we're seeing. A lot of people are throwing a lot of money around the people who are able to show up January 6th and who continue to attack our school boards, who continue to attack us in different communities and in different ways. And we just have to be real with each other, that this is not something that we get to just say online and speak, you know, with confidence that we deserve democracy without backing it up. We have to take action to actually make it happen.
Yeah, got to work for it and we got to fight for it.
So this is a big encouragement to everybody out there that, as Gil shared at the end, if there is an organization in your community that is doing good work, we encourage you to connect with them, at least become aware of the work that they're doing, so that if there's an opportunity for you to get involved, you're able to get involved. If there's other people in your community who are looking for an opportunity to get involved, you get to guide them to that. There's a coalition of organizations that continue to work together throughout the state of Texas, trying to push for that safe, just, equitable, and inclusive society that we want to see reflected in our communities. And so get connected, take those extra steps. If you have questions, definitely reach out to Indivisible Text Ledge. You can reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or email at indivisibletxledge, that's LEGE@gmail.com. And we'd be happy to get connected with you or connect you with another org based on where your passions and your opportunities for work are. This is a day for us to really reflect on everything that's happened. This is still the remnants of the Trump presidency, and we have midterms coming up in November, and we have a whole lot of work between now and then. And so we want everyone to stay strong in this, to stay connected, and we can continue to make progress if we do it together.
I would like to point out one thing that we heard echoed from several speakers today that I don't think can be emphasized enough, and that is the importance of getting into conversation with the people around us, our neighbors, about voting rights and what we can and can't do now, how those changes in laws in Texas affect all of us, how it's going to affect our ability to vote, how it's going to affect our ability to drive people around us to vote. And to start this conversation and this relationship with the people who are literally geographically closest to us. I think that is one of the ways that we're going to be able to win if we do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're here to support as many folks are willing to get plugged in and so many others are too. So I think it's just leaning into those conversations, building those relationships is so important. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us on this broadcast, for taking the time out of your evening to hear from these leaders and organizers and the various speakers that were available for this event, and definitely encourage you to continue to stay plugged in. And thank you so much for your time this evening. Bye, everybody.
Good night.